So today the church is celebrating the memorial of the dedication of the Basilica of Mary Major. And the Lord is giving us today this gospel that shows the profession of faith of Peter, which in one hand we see this divine aspect of Peter of professing his faith, that not only acknowledging Jesus as the Christ, as the Messiah, but also believing in that. So that's, let's say, this divine aspect of Peter. On the other hand, which is the second part of the gospel, we have the human aspect of Peter. That is this part where Jesus has to perform an exorcism, if you want, on Peter. And so that already shows us this picture, if you want, of the church that on one hand is divine, that is instituted by God and carried out by God, but on the other hand also the human aspect of the church, that is the God who uses what is human in order to reach out what is human, if you want. And I believe this gospel is quite beautiful because, first of all, it shows us that God has chosen what is weak. For many of us who sometimes we believe that holiness is all about being perfect or flawless and all that, that already shows in itself that that's not the case. If we study the Gospels, if we scrutinize the Gospels, we see that the disciples, they were pretty messed up, right? Which is a comfort, if you want, for those who want to follow Jesus, because that's not what really he expects from us at all. But on the other hand, it shows this aspect of the scandal of the cross, because this exorcism that Christ performs on Peter is quite important. So Christ, he announces his passion, he announces the cross, he announces that which for man is a scandal, which is suffering. And then here we have Peter that is saying, no, Lord, no, you cannot go there. There you cannot go. So let us pray, I'm not quoting, of course, let us pray that you may not go through this. And then Christ, seeing what is speaking behind Peter, let's say, what is the motivation of Peter, the spirit that Peter has at that particular moment, Christ, out of love, he has to exercise that spirit. And it's beautiful because here already shows the discernment that Christ had over spirits. Absolutely. Because when he says, get behind me, Satan, because you think as men do, Christ, he's able to have this discernment, to see through Peter and to tackle, if you want, the very spirit that is speaking through Peter, that is in this episode, the devil, right? And I think that's important because many of us, we may also be affected, I would say, by that spirit as well, but that mentality, which is the scandal of the cross. And Paul, he speaks later in his letters about the scandal of the cross, which is a danger that many of us might have today. I usually say that everybody wants to be, not everybody, but many people want to be Christians, but not every Christian wants to carry their cross, right? Because yes, Jesus Christ says, whoever wants to be my disciple, pick up his cross and follow me. Which means that all of us wanting to be a Christian, yes, we have been sealed, if you want, with a cross. And what is a cross? Well, everything that today crucifies me, if you want. Every suffering that is there in front of us, it can be something very little or something as profound as a cancer, if you want. But everything that crucifies us today, everything that in front of which we are powerless. And the cross has this dimension, if you want, to show us that in front of that, we are no one. Because on the cross, the only one who really has a power is God. Because what can we do when we are crucified? Absolutely nothing. So it is a word that invites us to pick up our cross, I would say, I would believe, and we live in this society today that no one can suffer, right? I come from Brazil and there is a famous church there. I won't say the name, but their slogan is stop suffering, right? And this stop suffering is quite demonic. If you look from the perspective of this gospel, stop suffering is very demonic. Because what is it that it tells us? Well, do not enter into the will of God. Do not enter into your cross. And look around, brothers and sisters, and we see our society today that is very much based on this premise of not suffering. That's why today we cannot speak the truth. Why? Well, because the truth, as we say, it hurts. And if it hurts, it means that it makes you suffer. So, and if it makes you suffer and you cannot suffer, therefore get rid of it. Get rid of the truth. You cannot speak the truth anymore, which is slowly what we call politically correctness, right? And many other things. There is always this premise, this voice that tells us to avoid whatever suffering we may encounter today. That's why more and more we see a society that is shallow. People who don't have, let's say, a spinal cord anymore because we cannot suffer. It's like today, nowadays in the schools, we see the games that the children they have. It's quite interesting. Games in which nobody loses. Everybody wins, right? Which for young boys, let's say, who is very by nature competitive, is like, it's something so frustrating. But yes, and why is it that everybody wins? Well, because because losing makes you suffer, and you cannot suffer, right? And then slowly we teach our society. We are teaching kids not to be responsible or face challenges and all that. But at the end, if you bring that into a spiritual context, we can teach the kids to pick up their crosses, and that's bad. That's why Jesus here looking at this danger here. Get behind me, Satan. Who has told you to go ahead of me? Get behind me. The Lord is the one. The Lord is the first. I am here to do the will of my Father. So get behind me. Don't go ahead of me. Because every time we allow, let's say, because of the lack of discernment or anything like that, we allow the devil to go in front of us, and then he becomes our guide. And that's what he wants to do with us, to make you and I to get away of our crosses, to get out of our crosses. And when we get out of our crosses, that's what we find. We find hell. That's pretty much what it is. That's why we have so many divorces nowadays, many abortions. Why? Because deep inside, we want to get out of our sufferings. And all those are escapes, right? I mean, and I don't say that because I don't have any sympathy whatsoever to those people. That's not the point. I mean, I deal on a regular basis with women who had abortions. It's a huge, huge suffering. It's not easy. Or people who had divorce and all that. But ultimately, if you want, those are mechanisms to make us fly away from our crosses, let's say. And Jesus, seeing this danger that comes from the devil, boom, he goes to the point and he exercises Peter, which is beautiful, which is an act of love, which is really an act of love. So let us give thanks to the Lord for this beautiful gospel today. Let us ask him to give us the spirit of Peter, to be able to recognize Jesus as the Christ, the one who saves, and not be scandalized with our crosses. Each one of us, we have our crosses. You right now, if you're listening to me, for sure you have your cross. Maybe in your marriage, maybe with your kids, me as a priest as well. All of us, we have our crosses. But something that the devil will never tell us, never, ever, that it is in our crosses where we find Christ. It is in our crosses. It is that in your suffering, in the midst of this storm, in this cross, that you find Christ crucified. And by finding him crucified, you are able to resurrect with him. So let us ask for the intercession of Peter as well for our church in times like this. God bless you all.